Hello everyone, and a warm welcome to you. Thank you for joining our webinar today. My name is Anne Prawl, and I look after our customer communities here at Fiscal Technologies. We're delighted to have Ellen Leith, the founder and editor of Purchase to Pay Network, with us here today as your presenter. She'll be discussing the latest trends which are transforming purchase to pay operations in today's businesses and look at how these trends are working, for example, to improve efficiencies, reduce fraud and errors, and emphasize partnerships and teamwork in the business. But before I hand over to Ellen, let me just run through a few things. Although you're now in listen-only mode, please feel free to ask any questions you like. Just type them into the text box there on the GoToWebinar panel. Your questions are sent to us privately, and we'll try to address them before the end of the presentation. Now, if you run out of time for questions, don't worry. We will respond to you privately afterwards. I'll also give you our contact email address towards the end of the presentation, so feel free to send us your question that way, and I'll be sure to come back to you. Also, after the webinar, we'll send you an email with a link to a short survey. We use our surveys to help us develop and improve our webinar program, so we'd really love it if you could fill one out for us. And just so you know, all completed surveys will be entered into our quarterly prize draw for an Apple Store gift voucher. So to give you a quick overview of the proceedings today, I'll give you now a brief overview of Fiscal and PPN. Then I'm going to hand over to Ellen. And then I'll wrap up at the end and give you details about a no-obligation free risk analysis for your organization. For those of you not familiar with Fiscal Technologies, we are a specialist provider of a software solution called AP Forensics, which, just as the name implies, is a tool designed specifically to enable AP or purchase-to-pay teams to find errors or detect risk or fraud themselves before they allow payments to go out the door. Not everyone seems to be aware that this type of easy-to-use solution exists as an alternative to engaging recovery auditors periodically or tasking the internal audit department with spotting process issues and lost profits. We've been in business for 15 years now, and we have over 250 customers around the world. We are completely committed to empowering finance teams with tools to protect their organization's spend. We count Oracle, SAP, Sage, and many more among our partnerships, and we're pleased to have garnered several awards along the way, the latest of which is the Queen's Award in Enterprise Innovation we won last year for our AP Forensics product. This slide gives you an idea of the breadth of clients we're proud to work with across both public and private sectors and in virtually every industry sector. So you'll see such leading retailers as Nordstrom, Next, and Harrods, as well as local governments. The City of Raleigh, Leeds, and Westminster use our solution, all through the NHS and private healthcare industry. They're all using AP Forensics to protect their organizational spend. Now let me introduce you to your speaker. Ellen started up PPN back in 2008 and has steered it ever since as editor, so coming up now on 10 years. PPN is a rich community of finance professionals who want to be at the forefront of P2P developments and conversations. So do visit their website and see for yourself the wide offering of events and resources, all organized by Ellen and her team. Great. Well, without further ado, let me hand over to Ellen. The floor is yours.
Hello, everyone, and thanks for the introduction, Anne. So today I want to take you through some of the major trends we've seen that are about to have a significant impact on the way we operate across purchase to pay. But first, I'm a great believer in looking at the wider picture that influences these factors. And I think you'd all agree that we've been living through some extraordinary times. Since the 2008 financial crisis, organizations have been looking for ways to do more with what they have already. In the public sector, this has been felt even more dramatically. Austerity measures have hit the public sector particularly hard. And in general terms, although we've seen some economic growth this year, it's mostly been driven by borrowing. And with inflationary pressures building and a weakened pound, many CFOs are cautious about adding any risk to their portfolios. Then if you set these conditions against the uncertainty caused by our impending exit from the European Union, we start to see a potentially challenging picture ahead. With those Brexit talks only just having started, obviously it's far too early to get a clear picture of what the post-EU landscape will look like for the UK. However, no doubt there will be some implications to our supply chains, and some suppliers are likely to increase their prices to protect against weaker sterling. Take the NHS, for example. At least half of the products used originate from outside of the UK, with a high proportion manufactured in Europe, Switzerland, the US and the Far East, for example. So what does all this mean for you in purchase to pay? Well, you're in a unique position to be able to protect your organization's core business by making savings and efficiencies that will directly impact the bottom line and protect services and make sure that your suppliers are paid on time, reducing risk and helping your own career in the process. Okay, so one of the ways organizations are looking to be able to achieve this is by looking at their invoice processing methods. And the strongest trend that we've identified was a predicted growth in e-invoicing. Although in the UK true e-invoicing, and by that I mean touchless computer-to-computer exchange of documents, is still relatively low at around 24%. And more than 66% of UK organisations predict that this will have a significant impact on their departments in the next year. And done properly, e-invoicing has the potential to transform business. It's not just a faster way of paying suppliers, it's much broader than that. E-invoicing implementation isn't just a question of being able to pay all suppliers to terms. Done properly, it can be a means to an altogether more efficient machine. So stripping paper out of the system and introducing reporting capabilities into your process means that organizations can not only reduce their exposure to error, risk and fraud, but are also able to gain some really deep real-time insight into the business at the same time. And whether by design or default, this greater visibility has the ability to shine a light on the wider purchase-to-pay process from end to end. And the growth of the cloud has fed into our overall drive into greater transparency. Almost 50% of UK P2P practitioners expect to be affected by a continued move away from on-premise solutions and into the cloud. Despite some recent high-profile security issues, the direction of traffic towards the cloud seems to be only one way. At the moment, around 69% of organizations remain on-premise, but it was interesting to see that 72% expected to become completely in the cloud at some point in the near future. For those who were less certain, most agreed that they would be likely to continue in a hybrid on-premise cloud environment. Some cited issues surrounding compliance and legal requirements as inhibiting factors. With its ability to allow companies to store and manipulate data remotely, cloud computing offers unmatched flexibility, especially for businesses with offices in multiple locations, for example. And affordability is often one of the main reasons companies switch to the cloud, as it typically costs less than maintaining an in-house system. You know, for example, organizations don't have to pay for potentially expensive hardware or maintenance fees. But perhaps one of the best and maybe less obvious reasons of moving to the cloud lie in the connectivity potential that it presents. And connectivity is what our next trend is all about. Just over 30% of organizations expect to be affected by continued collaboration across purchase to pay in the next year. With an increase in automation and factors like the cloud that we've just talked about, the door's been flung open to connect the departments in a way that hasn't been possible in the past. Interdependent relationships between procurement and finance can be supported by shared KPIs and be tracked and then reported on. But it's a culture shift for some organizations and should certainly be accompanied with a significant level of change management. We found that just over 16% of organisations work closely together, they said all the time, and a further 43% suggested that they did that for most of the time, which I would suggest is possibly more realistic. Where this worked most effectively, the organisations involved held regular monthly or even weekly meetings. 33% of organisations said that collaboration within their departments had come about as a direct result of someone being appointed to head up that area as a whole. So that breaks down the silos of the past, particularly when those reporting levels, lines are changed. However, it's important to view collaboration and the benefits that it can bring as a continuing project. Some organisations reported that while it was something that had been started, other projects then took precedence, which meant that some of those old silos started to reappear. And others reported that a regular staff turnover had impacted that overreaching strategy of trying to work more closely together. And this kind of connectivity and transparency doesn't have to end when you're traveling or out of the office. While its take-up is still fairly moderate, organizations expect that mobile capture to play an increasingly important role in their processing. If you're an FD on the move, for example, your team back in the office no longer has to wait for that crucial invoice to be approved. You can approve it and workflow it into your ERP system. And if you want to expense something, with mobile capture, in theory at least, it's easy. Capture the image on your phone, and again, this can be routed into the correct channels direct from wherever you are. And on top of that, you can have access to your finance system and check on the status of anything you like, depending, of course, on the set permissions that you have within the solution. So it's easy to see that this is something that could be really very useful to organizations in the future. And all this leads to huge potential within your processing. If you have interconnecting KPIs across your purchase to pay departments, together with an integrated P2P solution, perhaps in a team that sits together and is headed up by a global head of purchase to pay, you have an enviable capacity to gather strategic data that could benefit both your department and your organization as a whole. And this need for transparency is pushing finance and procurement professionals to automate across the entire purchase to pay process, dissolve the boundaries between the departments, and gain access to critical information about suppliers, purchases, spend and cash flow. By leveraging analytics, dashboards and reports, key stakeholders can drill down into the data, analyze issues and uncover some of those opportunities. In parallel to the expanded focus on internal collaboration, organizations will also increasingly turn to business network ecosystems to connect with some of your trading partners across the globe and conduct invoice and purchase order transactions in real time as well. And if we're talking about real time, let's talk about robotics. Designed to take over routine rule-based tasks, robotic processing automation has the advantage of being able to keep doing the same thing day in, day out, 24 hours a day. And as long as the other parts of your processing don't change, fitting robotics into your solution can be a highly effective, efficient, and error-reducing exercise. One of the salient features of an RPA system is that once it's been configured and set up according to the business requirements, it can then proceed to work on its own. This has a potentially huge implication for BPO companies and outsourcing contracts, where at least historically, much of the benefit of using them rely on labor arbitrage. But why outsource when you can use RPA? I'm not convinced that as yet the market is sufficiently mature to draw back any or at least many outsourced contracts, but without doubt it's certainly a discussion that BPO and outsourcers are having. But if it's a route that you're interested in exploring, and certainly from some of the feedback we've had on a few of the surveys we've done recently, it's certainly something which is on people's minds at least. You know, it's worth making the distinction between RPA and AI. They're sometimes used interchangeably, but true AI has the ability to learn and grow, but both the benefit and perhaps, you know, the weakness of a robot is that it will only do exactly what you tell it to do. So that the trick is to get it right in the first place, because once it's programmed, that's what it will continue to do, and you have to be careful that the rest of your processes it doesn't change, because you know that can have a significant impact on the outcomes you're looking to achieve. So we spent some time looking at what's likely to impact us in the near future, and we talked briefly in the beginning about the background against which it's set, and perhaps that background could go some way to explaining why, despite these trends, the top 3 challenges we're faced with could be recognized by anyone in accounts payable over the last 15 or 20 years. You know, these are the fundamentals of what we do, but too many organizations continue to be hampered and held back by them. In fact, a small number of organizations pointed out that nobody had looked at their master supplier file since the last ERP upgrade, which in at least one of the cases was back in 2011. Of course, if you're working in an environment like that, it's going to be impossible to achieve the levels of efficiency that the best performing P2P teams can. And in the long term, you know, that's not really sustainable. All organizations look to their margins, of course, and those who aren't streamlined are likely to find themselves with unhappy suppliers and working in a complex, untraceable, and ultimately costly system. Interestingly, and I thought I'd highlight it, we discovered that the 4th most significant challenge was dealing with senior staff. And one of the reasons for that probably comes down to the lack of change management we were talking about earlier. You know, if there's a solution implementation or a process improvement that you've got planned, key stakeholders, and it doesn't just mean the people at the top, it's everybody involved, needs to be involved right from the very start. Without it, you know, as organizations have found that we've spoken to many times, they found to their cost, you're never going to get back the ROI that you were expecting. So moving to greater levels of automation has a number of different drivers, depending to some extent on the existing structure and the aim of the organization. And I've just picked out some of the factors there on the screen for you, which you're welcome to have a look at. However, the respondents' overwhelming driver was identified as the ability to improve invoice processing time and efficiency. This is followed by being able to reduce processing costs, and thirdly, to improve the ability to pay on time. Obviously important for everybody, but particularly for those in the public sector where we've got some government legislation to adhere to. And on top of the 6 key trends that we've already mentioned, let's also have a look at 3 more that are increasingly on the horizon as well. Organizations will begin to explore potential opportunities that blockchain and distributed ledgers offer as a way to conduct financial transactions. Blockchain technology has the potential to disrupt the space of working capital optimization and also your network purchase to pay. Despite several developments in the area, before companies can fully leverage blockchain technologies, the issues that we've talked about to some extent relating to standardization, legislation, and system integration and interoperability, these all need to be addressed first. And at the moment, as you're probably aware, we're still very much at the early stages of blockchain, with 70% of UK P2P practitioners as yet saying they're unaware of it. but it is something which is increasingly on the horizon, and if you're not aware of it already, I suggest that you have a look at it and see how it may impact you in the coming years, or is likely to. Companies are also continuing to focus corporate social consciousness and their CSR as they consider their impact on social and environmental issues. Their efforts to reduce waste and create a paperless business environment will increase interest, obviously, on paperless invoicing and other processes. Emphasis on CSR will not only impact the types of products companies sell and how they interact with the environment, but also the companies that you choose to do business with, as you examine some of the carbon footprints, and in the light of recent legislation, any hint of modern-day slavery in your supply chains as well. And finally, business users are going to continue to morph into customers, expecting that consumer-style usability, interfaces and apps, cloud-based and mobile technology, and easy-to-use dashboard analytics are enabling finance and procurement professionals to get some of that information that they want whenever and wherever they want it. And that's going to be something which is going to increase as the years go on, particularly when we're dealing with millennials in all of the organizations, that either within your organization or within those that you deal with in your supply chain, because that's the way they expect to do business, whether that's in their home life or whether it's something to do with their business world as well. So let's take a look at what this all means. The last few years have seen many advances in technology which have precipitated a new approach to P2P processing. However, we've been working in, as you know, tough economic environment, and now more than any time in our recent past, that future is quite hard to predict. So P2P teams find themselves challenged to achieve more and make some cost savings at the same time. Many are looking to automate processes to do this, but you need to make sure that you find a solution which is right for your organization and really spend that time in your upfront research as well. But above all, take a good look at your existing processes and policies before making any of those decisions. Otherwise, if you've got errors within them, that's what you're going to find yourself automating. And then there's a new technology on the horizon that we've spoken about, like robotics, mobile apps, and really true end-to-end processing. On top of that, we're in the middle of a culture shift, a move towards greater collaboration across P2P departments that sets the scene for new jobs like heads of purchase to pay or directors of global processing, blurring the old divisions and leading towards a transformation in the way that we do business. And finally, there's a real opportunity to add value to your organization as a whole. Today, P2P practitioners are starting to find themselves with the ability to report back into the board, and then you've got some real strategic influence in your organization. I think with that, that sort of wraps up the trends that I wanted to share with you today, and I hope you've enjoyed that and have got some useful information from it. And I'm not sure whether I'm handing back to Anne now, and perhaps if you have any questions, we can address those or address them at the end. But I'll hand you back to Anne now. Thanks for listening.
Fabulous. Thank you very much, Ellen. That really does give us a great overview of the major trends and some new thinking that's affecting purchase-to-pay processes and organizations. I'm sure our listeners can find even more information on some of the trends and issues you've highlighted on your website. So I would like to pick up on a couple of the challenges Ellen mentioned and offer some assistance if we can. In particular, the point she mentions about collaboration between finance and P2P teams. I'd like to offer our listeners a chance to trial our own preventative AP forensic solution, which allows P2P departments to collaborate with each other and with internal audit. So first of all, what is AP forensics? AP Forensics is a cloud-based, easy-to-use solution that is set up with its mission to constantly monitor transactions and suppliers for risk and errors. A daily report is then set up to be delivered to a user's desktop, and that report is reviewed and actioned before any payments are then effected. You also have access to over 80 different reports and dashboards to give you ready insight into your financial operations and help track those all-important KPIs. And I'd like to give you a chance to trial this solution and see the results for yourself. We call it a risk review. Here's how it works. You provide an extract of, say, 2 to 3 years of transaction data from your ERP, even if it's already been reviewed by auditors. It doesn't matter because we're going to review it extremely thoroughly. Your extract is uploaded securely to Fiscal under a mutual NDA. And I just want to mention that we have an information security management policy that's accredited to ISO 27001, so we are very serious about data security. Your data upload is truly safe with us. Our analysts will then use our solution to interrogate all your data, and we produce a risk review report of the findings. We'll review a sample of the findings with you, and then regardless of what you decide afterwards, you are free to keep the report without any obligation to purchase at all. You know, we really do all the work, and we're keen to do this because we want to demonstrate the value that this kind of solution will bring to your organization from day one. So please do get in touch with me if you'd like to take advantage of this offer. Ellen also identifies that maintaining the master supplier file is a top challenge, sort of a continuing top challenge faced by most P2P departments. So I'd like to let you know about our next webinar, which takes place in September, and the details and registration are on our website. We'll have Brendan Burke, who heads up our Specialized Services Consultancy Division and is a certified fraud examiner himself. We'll have him on hand to take you through 7 steps to get your master supplier file tidy and then keep it that way as a key component of your anti-fraud strategy. Brendan spent years consulting with companies on both sides of the Atlantic, so I think you'll find this webinar very useful. And that basically concludes our session for today. Please do feel free to get in touch with us. We look forward to having you on the next webinar and wish you a very good rest of the day. Thanks again for joining us. Bye.